Welcome back. This is Retirement News Online, and we're going to talk about retirement. It should be a time of peace and mind, not a constant worry, which some people experience. But the truth is, risks don't disappear once you stop working, they just sort of change. And we're going to talk about that right now with my guest, Adam Howard, with Envisage Wealth Advisors in Lexington, Kentucky. Welcome back. So risk is something that I think a lot of people, they think immediately, well, if he's talking risk, he's talking market risk. You know, there's a lot of other things going on, but let's start with defining risk and the idea that people start investing, they have this idea of risk tolerance, which to me is emotional, right? But the real risk that we need to worry about when it's relating to the investments is maybe risk capacity, the capacity of your portfolio to withstand risks and get to your goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's, I'm very, funny you say emotional. The whole behavioral finance side of our world has always fascinated me. And I've always created analogies to help both me, myself, understand it, but also clients, prospects that come in the door. I describe risk, right? When you're planning for it. Think if you're driving on a road, speed limit sign. Okay, 1 would be I'm very conservative. 99 would be I am stomping on the Ferrari's gas pedal and I am driving to get to where I need to be as fast as I possibly can, right? But as you know, if we're driving a Ferrari going 99 mile an hour, there's probably a lot more risk, danger involved to driving that fast, right? Experience. Driving that fast that there might not be if we're going 25 mile an hour. So same analogy when it comes to investing. If I can get to where I need to be, going 60 mile an hour, right? Why do I need to go 99? Why do I need to absorb the excess amount of risk, right? Because there's this concept in behavioral finance called loss aversion, okay? We as humans, creatures, we hate losing things a lot more than we like winning things. That's just how we think as humans.
Fear of missing out.
If we're missing out. So if we can prevent that, or at least mitigate some of that risk, why wouldn't we do it?
So your car analogy just brought something to mind too. You ever been driving and there's a guy who's behind you and he speeds past you and you keep getting to the light, he gets to the light first and you come up right behind him. And then you keep doing this whole process until you get to the location at the same time. He's racing there, trying to get there, but in most cases, it just doesn't make that much difference. Is that something that makes sense as kind of an analogy in financial planning?
Yeah. I mean, it's same concept with the score. You know, if I'm going to end up getting the same place in a safer manner, right, mitigating my own risk, not having to take on more risk than I should, in the same time frame that somebody over here might be taking, going twice the speed, twice as aggressive, why would I take on the extra risk? Right. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I would assume most people probably think of that mindset too, right? Nobody likes opening their statement every month and seeing a giant loss when their buddy next door might have had a smaller loss to their account.
Let's talk about common mistakes or misconceptions that people do when it comes to risk, because again, they may be concentrating just on market risk, but there's so many others. And we can, elaborate longevity. We're all living longer, great news, except we got to pay for it. Health risk, inflation risk, policy risk, which has now become way more important than anything else. What are some of the misconceptions you see?
Stay off the news. Well, it's not a misconception, but jokingly, I have more clients that call me and say, hey, I read this or saw this reel on Instagram. Stay off. If there's something you always want to pick my brain about, call me. I love to talk about these things. But to your point, there's risk involved in anything we do in our financial market, right? Am I risking spending more time with my kids, going on vacations every year that might take away from retirement savings, which could take my retirement time from 60 to 62 because we're spending it, right? There's an opportunity cost to that. So what you have to kind of determine when it comes to risk is whatever I'm doing that maybe some people think you shouldn't, or that you see as more of a benefit than taking on the risk over here. If this outweighs the risk on the left side, then that's fine. But that's something the behavioral and emotional side of you have to determine if the risk is worth it to you.
And so when we talk about risk, and again going back to market risk, the market is inherently risky, but that's how we make money. But I think, would it be accurate to say that a lot of people think about investing as only equities? Or maybe even real estate, but there are other things that you can do, and we don't have to get specific here, but for example, there's some things that you can do or probably need to do about protection and growth, which you can't do with stocks, right? There have to be some other ideas, right?
Right. So there are several vehicles out in the industry that you can utilize to mitigate risk in different factors, right? Inflation risk is a big one, silent killer that nobody really realizes. You know, interest rates have been high here the last few years, and people are automatically thinking, okay, high yield savings, CDs, but what they don't see in the background is how high inflation's been. So as an example, if I'm in a CD at 5% and inflation has been 4%, you take the spread, I'm only making 1% on my money every year. So in examples like that, you have to have some kind of stocks, right? But on the opposite side, there are different asset classes that you can utilize that when those stocks go south, somebody decides to make a tweet or something in the world happens that takes the stock market down, right? We have assets over here that can help mitigate some of that risk, right? So to full circle, diversification, right? We don't necessarily, some people might need to be or want to be in all stocks because maybe they've got a high risk tolerance or their time frame is longer than, say, somebody that's 10 years out of retirement. So that might be fine.
Yeah, when you're younger, all that makes sense.
But diversification in every aspect, asset classes, it could be different investment vehicles, you name it.
Going back to diversification, another thing, you may agree here, that a lot of clients that you have or people that you talk to, they think they're really diversified. They've got a bunch of these mutual funds and all these ETFs and things like that, and when you dig into under the hood, they're all in the same stocks, right? They're all just correlated, right? It looks different, but it's really not. That's kind of, would that be called naive diversification in one sense?
It happens, yeah. It happens more times than people realize, just being so concentrated in one area, right? Again, every ETF fund, I'm going to say this broadly, most ETF funds are going to hold your top 5-6 companies, right? Because you somewhat have to. But if you're just investing in those top 5 things, right, your diversification is probably not as deep or diverse as one might think. So again, back to the conversation, is looking at all parts. We obviously, as financial advisors, have so many resources to our hands and in the office that we can help you analyze what you have, right, break it down and make sure that we're diverse enough, and when certain scenarios happen, a 2008 market crisis, COVID happens again, another country decides to invade another country, right, things that really pull a drawback on the market, that we're allocated properly, that maybe we don't absorb all of it.
Last question is probably an entire video in of itself. It's one of my favorite forms of risk to talk about, sequence of returns risk. And again, that's really related to timing, right? You can have two people with the same assets, same investments, take income at different times and have wildly different results. Talk about that and how you mitigate that.
Right. So sequence of return risk, if the knows or whoever doesn't know, we're making sure that we can take out a certain dollar amount, but also growing our money at the same time, right? So making sure we can pull money out, market's growing, moving, and we're not going to run out of money. One of the big misconceptions that people or clients have that come in our office is, okay, my account did 10-15% last year. I can pull out 10-15% this year, right? But what's happening is they don't realize that sometimes we have back-to-back negative years, right? So in those years that we're taking out 10, 15, whatever that percentage is, if I've got -20 the next year, -10 the next year, -2 the following year, right? To make up, right, to get to my break-even point, that's a pretty significant return that you've got to have, right, just to make sure that we can keep our money and make it last forever. So again, diversify, making sure we're allocated properly, investment vehicles that might mitigate some of that risk to make sure that we don't run out of money.
Yeah, and a true liability in sequence is taking income, starting to take income in a down market, because if you start taking income and the market is down early in your retirement, it's much worse than if it's down at the end of your retirement investing and income. And well, I guess what the overall truth here is that there's a lot of risks that consumers probably don't know about. The only thing you can do is talk to somebody smart and good looking, like Adam Howard from Lexington, Kentucky. Thank you for watching Retirement News Online.